Alright guys, so in the last video we created our SettableFuture. Well, that's the first video we created that, and the second one we created our API that generates a SettableFuture. So I added this, but let's just well, I didn't add it, but before it was basically doing this. Let's just code it together from scratch again. We were simply returning a SettableFuture here, right in that video. So now we're going to add a behavior to it. Obviously, this is not going to do anything. We're just going to get a SettableFuture. Even though it's settable, we're not setting it, so it's completely useless right now, right? So let's just do this. What we're going to do, we're going to submit a runnable to our thread pool. The reason we're submitting as a runnable is that if you don't want to submit this callable, because if you submit this callable, then the future we get from that will have to be wrapped around our settable feature, which is going to be a little painful. So we're going to instead submit a runnable to the thread pool, and then inside the runnable, we're going to actually set our feature, our settable feature, with the result from the callable. It sounds a little complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. So let's just go ahead and get started. So we have our SettableFuture. Click your server, submit new runnable. Okay. Return SettableFuture. SettableFuture. Set task call. Okay. That's it. So we're basically submitting the runnable, and all the runnable does is it executes the call. Executes a callable task, and then sends a result to our SettableFuture. And then we return the SettableFuture as a result of this method, because otherwise it's pointless. So let's just consume this API. Alright, we're here. So basically I'm just going to replace this with our API. Alright, simple. Since it's running a SettableFuture, which is a form of a feature, implements feature basically, it doesn't really need to do, we don't need to change this, but let's just run it just to see the behavior is exactly the same as before. It's waiting, it's waiting, it's waiting. Alright, done. So our SettableFuture behaves the way we expect it to. So the main reason I want us to create our own feature is that number one, to understand what the Future API is, but number two, to understand some of its shortcomings. So we quickly realized that to constantly poll the feature, whichever thread that's handling it has to be at a constantly running state, constantly polling for the feature. So constantly locking one thread with basically polling the feature. So that's kind of obviously not efficient, as you can see, because you won't want other thread to do other things. So if you're actually like using features in Android, for instance, you can't do this in the main thread. So you might want to do other things such as you use like a looper or basically do what we're about to do, which is add a listener to the settable itself, which will give you a callback once the settable is set. So, okay, so let's just go ahead and do that. So let's go back to our SettableFuture and then create a listener API. Listener. Void settable set. Okay, so it's going to return. Should I return the result? I think it should. Yeah, it should. I think it should also return an error if it does indeed error out. Exception. Okay, and then so we're going to have that functionality because our settable currently does not support errors. So we're going to have to support it. So we have a set method, so we're going to copy that. It's going to be set error. Set exception. All right. And the reason I'm writing that, wrapping that around right object is that because obviously you can't be setting the value while you're also setting the error. You can only have one. And also here we're going to have to enforce that. If exception, obviously it's going to have to be after this also. If exception not equals null, if it's not null, return. And we'll do the same here. Let's just do this at the try block. In this case, it's object not equals null, return. Basically, I'm covering for the scenario that one thread is setting the object and the other one is trying to throw an exception into the setter. But if the object is set, we'll basically ignore the exception because one of the threads succeeded. But if the error succeeds first, then the next thread that's trying to set it will basically be locked out. Alright, so now we have exceptions in place, so add our listener. I want to accept the listener in the constructor itself as its only dependency. Okay, and then we're going to have to accept that here. Alright. Okay. Alright. Alright, so we have our listener, which currently does nothing. Well, I missed one thing. So where do you run the listener is very important. You don't want to run the listener on the same thread. Well, actually, you might. You know what? Just for starters, we're going to cover that case. So basically, when the thread that's setting it will also get the callback on itself. And what do I mean by it? This is what I mean. If the exception is not set, and the object indeed is set, this listener sets. Okay. Same here, except the object is null. The exception is very much real. Okay, so we have that in place. So let's go back to our API to support this very use case. SettableFuture set error e. Then here I'm gonna again use a listener. Well, so where should this listener come from? I think it should be somewhere here because that would make sense. All right, perfect. So we don't have to do anything right now. All right, that's good. So let's go back to our main. Obviously, this is an error now because it wants us to submit a listener also. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so system, whoops. Okay, so now we don't have to do this because it will have blocked. I'm not going to read it for you guys for future reference. It would have blocked the main thread of the app until the feature is resolved. So let's just run this, see what happens. Okay, done. So it's basically waiting for 5 seconds, and then our callback is being fired, and we get the result back. So this is a lot useful than basically doing a constantly pod. But so let's say you're an Android developer, you cannot. You want to basically use this feature to get a callback from an API, and then why am I talking about Android developers? Because I'm an Android developer myself, so like I deal with a lot of that use case. So I think it makes sense to supply some form of a executor to run the callback on. So let's just support that use case too. Here, I'm going to call listener executor. There's going to be an optional though, because if it's not set, I'm going to have the caller thread having caller thread, setter thread handle the listener itself. So let's just do this. Yeah, let's call it listener executor. Perfect. Okay, so if listener executor equals null, then executors, well, no, I'm just going to set it directly. I don't need to, I'll do the null check in the setter. And here, all right, so let's go back to our set method right here. If equals null, if it's null, it's going to run it on the thread that's calling it. If it's not null, this listener executor submit. I'm going to submit new runnable. That's going to call. Well, it's going to basically set. Whoops. Okay, let's just. So I leave the lambdas out because I don't want you guys to get confused with the API that I'm using. So I'm not actually opting in for lambdas. Okay, so let's just see what it looks like here. But well, it looks like nothing right now because we didn't support that here. Executor service, listener executor. Okay, let's go back here. I'm going to supply executor service. Single thread executor. So what are we looking at right now? We're going to have our SettableFuture be set on our worker thread that runs in the Futures API here. This is our worker thread technically. And then the listener will be called on this thread that we're providing. So let's call again. Let's run it. Should wait for 6 seconds and then we should get a callback, but the callback will be ran on new single thread executor. Boom, works. So to understand what's going on with, I'm going to log the thread IDs being set on thread, current thread, get thread ID. And then the callback, I'm gonna put them both here in our SettableFuture. Being listened on. All right, let's run it now. Just help you guys understand what's going on. As you can see, it's being set on the thread with the ID 13, and it's being listened on a thread that's the ID is 15. So yeah, like I did with most of the videos, though, I'll have to be there's actually a Guava API again that supports this, and many other future options, many other future executors APIs, other concurrent API, which is amazing. And again, I'm going to put a link to the Guava API here in the video description. And I hope you guys like it. And then I'll see you guys in the next video. And this ends the series for SettableFuture and Concurrency.